If you guys think that the stories that I've shared so far have been personal and embarrassing and just really deep and dirty, you haven't seen anything yet. You wait until we get into today's video, because today is the dirtiest, the grittiest, and the most embarrassing story that I could ever tell about my life. So I hope you're ready. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Tara. I'm a mother of 3 awesome kids, very happy wife, and recovering alcoholic and addict. So the purpose of my videos is not to try to impress you. It's to show you that it doesn't matter what kind of road you go down. It doesn't matter how bad your choices have been in your life. All that matters is that tomorrow can be completely different than today, and your life can change in amazing ways. For those of you who are returning subscribers, thank you for stopping by and checking out another episode of Tara Was a Mess, because these stories are all about what a train wreck I was whenever I was younger. This story starts about 12 years ago. My husband and I have 3 kids. The oldest 2 are biologically mine, and the youngest one is biologically his, but they're all ours. So at this time, I had the oldest 2, and we were with their biological father. They both have the same dad, and they were born 22 months apart. I was 5 days shy of 20 whenever I had the oldest one, and I was about 21 whenever I had the second one. So at this time, I want to say they were about 9 months and like 2 years. At that time, I was working as a waitress in various restaurants. We'll call their biological father Baby Daddy. So Baby Daddy and I were together for 4.5 years. During this time, we made 2 beautiful children. During this time, I was basically the only person working. You see, the way our relationship was set up, we were going through Job and Family Services at that time for food assistance and medical assistance. Now, I don't know how things are now, but in the state of Ohio at that time, if there were 2 parents in the house and there were minor children that needed daycare or, just child care, then one parent could work and the other parent wasn't forced to work. They were allowed to stay at home to be able to care for the children. That way the state did not have to incur babysitting fees because they help with Title 20 daycare assistance. Baby Daddy didn't really work during our whole relationship. I think there was a point where he worked for about 2 months doing, he was building a website. And whenever that job ended, he did not go back to work. He would also work for his father, who owned a telephone and computer networking business in the area at that time. And so he would go and do like a job or work a couple of days for him and pull in money in that manner. But it was very sporadic. It was never for a long period of time, and it was normally more money than he should have made because he was working for his father. Now, the other way that he was able to pull in money for our family was that he would call his dad or he would call his grandma and he would tell them some huge sob story. I always gave him the benefit of the doubt and gave him privacy to be able to have conversations with his family, because I just felt like it was the right thing to do. So he would go outside or he would go upstairs to the bedroom, and I would be inside with the kids, or I would be like downstairs, making dinner in the kitchen or something like that. And that would give him privacy so that he was able to have a conversation without distractions the whole time. And we generally did that for each other. I didn't really think anything of it, just because it didn't seem like a big deal. I found out after that relationship had ended that whenever he was calling his dad and his grandma, he was telling them that he was working and I wasn't, and he needed money to make up for the money that I was not providing our family, which was exactly the opposite of the truth. Because during that relationship, I was always working. I never went more than a couple of days without a job. The exception to that is part of this story coming up. Our relationship was really bad, bottom line. He was 6 years older and I was 18, about 18 and a half whenever we got together. So I was still really young, really naive, had no idea about the world, and I just couldn't believe that someone could be as vindictive and malicious as I found out that he was after the relationship was over, or closer towards the end of the relationship. I just didn't believe that someone could be that deplorable. I didn't realize that there was evil in the world like that. You know what I mean? Like, I was working at this restaurant at the time. And at that restaurant where I was serving, part of our uniform was that we were required to keep $20 on us at all times, to have a bank to make change for our guests as they came in. Like I said, it was part of our uniform. So if we didn't have that, we could be written up, we could get in trouble, we could, lose hours. So it was really important that I made sure that I had that money. So this one particular day, baby daddy decides that he needs 40s and he needs cigarettes. And whenever I tell him that I don't have the money to pay for those things for him, he freaks out. And he's yelling at me and he's cussing at me and he's telling me that I'm worthless. And he's like, well, I'm not going to stay here and watch these kids if you can't give me what I need. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I can't go to work and not have a bank. Like, I can get fired, And he just did not care. So he left the house and goes walking to his friend's house in the other part of the complex. I ended up not being able to go to work that night because I'm trying to hold this boundary with him. I'm trying to help him understand that this is not going to work and this isn't helpful for our family, and that it's just not going to be able to work like that, Because I wasn't able to go to work that night, I ended up being fired from that job. I didn't work after that for about 3 weeks. The reason that I didn't try to find a job immediately was because I knew at that time, like I knew several other times throughout my adult life before I ended up changing everything, that things couldn't keep going the way that they were. And something had to change. So I was trying to put my foot down and force him to actually get a job for once. So I refused to get a job. Now, we had already paid rent for the month before, but here we are, and we're coming up on the next month of rent. And if I don't have this rent money paid within 2 weeks, then they're going to file an eviction. Now, part of our story in that relationship was that during that time, we would move about every 6 months. And the reason for that is because we would get into a place, I would get us into a place, and I would do everything I could to try to juggle all the balls, all the bills and gas money and, and providing the alcohol and drugs. At that time, my addiction wasn't as progressed as his was. And a lot of it was me trying to make sure that he had what he needed so that he was more pleasant. I did not grow up in a split family. I grew up with two parents that have never been married to anyone else. They don't have children by anyone else. They've been very happily married for 34 years at this point. And so I was taught that you stick through it and you work on problems with your partner and that you just do what has to happen to make things better. I had this huge guilt complex about the idea of not doing everything that I could possible to make that relationship work, because that was just how I was brought up. In retrospect, I know that that relationship was extremely unhealthy, and that's why I ended up leaving, because it was more harmful to my children to see that relationship continue than it was for us to split up. I hadn't been working for 3 weeks and we had rent coming up. How am I going to make this money? I knew that I didn't have time to start a new serving job and do a week of training and make the $750 that it was going to take to pay our rent. So how am I going to make this money without selling my booty? How am I going to make this money? And so I thought, well, I'll fake sell my booty. So I thought that I would get a job at a strip club. There were several big strip clubs around the city that I had heard were nicer establishments where the girls were respected and where things were above board. And so I call around and I'm trying to see what I can do to get into one of those strip clubs and work there, at least for the next couple of weeks, so that I can make rent and we don't get evicted again. So what I find out is that all of these nicer strip clubs wanted me to go and get a background check and provide them with an official background check. Because of the financial situation at the time, I didn't have money to drive downtown, pay for downtown parking because that's expensive in any city, to go inside the police department and pay for multiple background checks because that was what I needed. And then to be able to take those background checks to these 4 different strip clubs so that I can try to get hired at one. That was not financially an option for me at that time. I didn't feel that that was an option. So I start calling to local strip clubs that were closer to the house. So I call this one strip club and I talk to a bartender and I'm like, are you guys hiring dancers right now? And she said, well, why don't you come in and fill out an application and, we'll do a little meet and greet and we'll just kind of see what happens. So I'm like, all right, cool. So that evening I do my makeup and I do my hair and I've got a cute shirt on and some cute jeans and I've got heels on and I roll into this strip club and I'm just trying to see what's up, and I had never been in a strip club at that time. I'd never been into any sort of an adult establishment like that, let alone one that was not in a great neighborhood, one that was apparently, and unbeknownst to me, known for activities that should not be going on in an establishment like that, but are at times. So I talked to the bartender and I fill out the application and she's like, hey, can you start work tonight? And I said, well, I don't really have the right clothing for that. So is it okay if I start tomorrow? And she's like, yeah, absolutely. So I go home and I find like these wedge heels that I had gotten from my mom, and I've got this like see-through like negligee and matching see-through thong that I had bought for, I don't know, like Valentine's Day or something like that, like an anniversary, I don't even know. But it's like sitting in my closet, and I don't think I wore it more than once. And so I'm like, okay, so this will work for an outfit for a week or two so that I can get some money rolling in, and then I can find another restaurant job. So the next night I go to the club. No big deal. I'm trying to learn the ropes, but no one was really all that friendly, and nobody really had much guidance to give me. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea what this was supposed to look like or what this was not supposed to look like. All I knew was that I wasn't in there to turn tricks, and I just needed to like make money and get out, because I am just not the type of person that feels comfortable being nude in front of people like that. I'm just more private about my body than that. Now I'm in the strip club and it's my second night, and these two guys come in. And like I said, I didn't really have any guidance, and I'm on drugs because how else am I going to get through this experience? Because this is just not me. This is not something that I would do. And so these guys come in and they start talking to me, or I start talking to them. I can't remember who initiated the conversation, but I end up sitting down with them, and they tell me that the wives are having girls' night, and so they're out having guys' night, and whatever, no big deal. Like, part of my brain knew what was going on because I teased them about their standard issue New Balance tennis shoes and cargo shorts. Like you know those New Balance tennis shoes that are gray and then they've got like yellow around the end and on part of the sole, like trail running shoes or whatever. At any rate, like they're both wearing shoes like that, and then one guy is wearing cargo shorts and the other guy is wearing these like really ugly dad jeans. The name of the game at this strip club, I don't know what it's like at other strip clubs, but at this club, the name of the game is get tips and get these guys to buy you drinks. Because like for every drink that a patron purchases for you as a dancer, you get a cut and the house gets a cut. So say it's a $10 drink. I think the house gets like $7 and you get $3. Or they get 6 and you get 4. It's something like that. So that's part of how you're making your money every night, is by having people sit there and buy you drinks. So they bought me a couple of drinks, and no big deal. We hung out and chatted for a little while, and I danced a couple of times, and then, you know, they left and the night went on. Well, I didn't see him again until Friday. So I think like my first or second night was Wednesday, and that was the first time that I saw them. And then I saw them again on Friday, and they came in and they just said, you know, once again, we're out for guys' night, like whatever. So that night, like they stayed later, and they were talking to me more than they had the time before that. I think during the course of that night, they bought me like 6 or 8 drinks. They start asking me if I want to go out with them. And I'm like, yeah, sure. You know, like my baby daddy sucks. My life sucks. I'm miserable. Like, if you want to take me out, like, let's go have fun, you know? So they're like, well, what are we going to do? You know, and we talked about going out and dancing. I'm like, yeah, like, let's go out dancing, you know, like take me out and show me a good time. I don't care. I wasn't picking up what they were putting down. And they're like, okay, well, you know, like we could pay for a room or whatever. And I was like, okay, sure. Like, that's your prerogative. If you want to, you know, pay for a room, like we'll go dancing. We'll see what's up. Like, you know, we'll just see what happens, see where the night takes us. So like my game was twofold. Like the first part was I knew that I wasn't going to be going to work on Monday night because Monday nights are slow. I can't imagine that a Monday night would be busy in any strip club, right? So I'm not going to work on Monday. The second part of that game was, all right, like maybe I'll go and hang out with them. I don't know, like we'll just see what happens. But bottom line, like I'm telling them what they want to hear. So they're like, well, when are we going to go out? And I'm like, well, we'll go out on Monday. Like I'll meet you guys here and then we'll leave from here. And they're like, that's okay. Like, that's cool. And so that was the hustle that night, was just like telling them what they wanted to hear, like any other guest. Monday comes and goes. I didn't go to work. I stayed home with the kids because that was my routine. Like, I was never a bar fly. That wasn't ever my thing. I never really went out and partied. I just hung out at home because I've always been a mom first. Even with dealing with like alcoholism and addiction, generally I try to make sure that the kids were like with my parents or with his dad or sisters. Wednesday night, they come in again and they're like, so where were you on Monday? And I'm like, oh, like baby daddy wouldn't let me go out, whatever. And they're like, okay, well, like, can you get us some drugs? And I'm like, I don't have anything, but like I can call somebody. And they're like, okay, cool, like, so I call this dude that I was buying coke off of at the time. And like, this is how low level this dope boy was. Like, so low level that he had to come to you and pick up the cash and then go to his dude and pick up the drugs and then bring them back to you. Like, that was how low level he was, right? So nobody's got some crazy like drug game going on. So I call this dude and like basically I talk to him while I'm talking to these guys in the club and like work it out for them that they're gonna meet at this McDonald's, I think it was, over on this one road off the interstate. So the guys leave, they go and meet him, they come back to the club, he goes, meets his dealer, and then comes back to the club so that they can do the handoff. So during this time, like, the drugs never touched my hand, the money never touched my hand. Like, all I've done is make a phone call, right? So I'm thinking, no big deal, whatever. So one of the guys goes to the restroom and the other guy's like, oh, so he's gonna go check and make sure everything's cool or whatever, like, do you want some whenever he comes back? And I'm like, no, I'm straight. Like, I'm just trying to work, like, I'm just trying to get my hustle on. And so like within a couple of minutes, SWAT comes busting in and they grab me, they grab this other girl that had been talking to these guys, and then they grab the dope boy, and then the dope boy's got his driver outside. So, because I think his license had been taken away at the time or something. So, they get the driver, they've got all four of us, and they take us all to the police station downtown. So when they're getting us together, like, all of us are being put into undercover vehicles. And like, whenever they handcuff me in the club, here I am, okay, wearing these wedge heels that I think I got from my mom because that was what I had available that I felt might be halfway appropriate, because I'm not a stripper. Like, I'm just working in this club trying to make money for rent for a couple of weeks, and then I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna get another serving job because that's what I do. So I'm standing there in a parking lot in like a completely see-through negligee and thong. Like, so bad. Like, it was so bad. It was the most demoralizing moment of my life. Like, I don't think that I've ever been more embarrassed than I was during this whole incident, because it was so unlike anything that I would do on a normal basis. I mean, really, even at that time, granted, my life is completely different now, but even at that time, that was not something that I would typically do. So we get downtown and they've got each of us in separate rooms for interrogation. And this guy comes in and he's interrogating me and he's asking me like, where did the drugs come from? Do I know the dope boys dude? Do I know like the driver? Like, where are they getting this stuff from? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I met this guy from the neighbor a few weeks ago and he goes and picks stuff up and then he comes back. Like, I don't know who his guy is. I don't know where the dude lives or if it's a guy or girl. Like, I literally know nothing other than the fact that I've got this guy's number and if I call, he brings me drugs. Like, after he comes and picks up my money and then goes and gets them, So then he's asking me about like the conversation that we had on Friday. Now, see, I forgot to mention this whenever I was first talking about that situation, but they're like, well, we can give you money, if you want to go out with us. And I'm like, I don't really need that. Just take me out because I want to have a good time because my life sucks, And so they're like, well, how much money did you say that you needed for rent? And I'm like, well, I think I need like $375 still. I had already made, right around $400 and I just, $300 or $400 and I just needed to make up the rest of it for rent, right? So they're like, well, if you come out with us, like we can give you the money. And I was like, all right, cool, like whatever, And that was the number that I threw out because that was the number that I needed. But once again, like I didn't show up, right? So when I'm sitting there in interrogation, I know that they always say that you're supposed to lawyer up. But to me, I didn't know that I had done anything wrong because like I said, drugs never touched my hand, money never touched my hand, and I didn't go anywhere or meet anybody, for any kind of party or anything, right? So I'm like, I didn't do anything wrong. I've got nothing to hide. So I'm just going to tell them, like what's what, no big deal. So they're like, well, did you agree to sex for money? And I was like, no, like, I don't know where you got that idea. Like, they told me that they wanted to take me out. They told me that they would take me dancing and that they would get a hotel room. And, and I said, that's cool. Like, well, we'll see where things go. And I didn't even show up. So like, no, I'm not a prostitute. So we're done with the interrogation and I go down to the Franklin County Workhouse and I'm finally able to change clothes. I went to court the next day for my arraignment and I was able to bond out. So I got bailed out for $500. My mom had money to pay my bail and then I paid her back. And so she picks me up and everything. And I go to my arraignment and they've charged me with a felony 5, trafficking cocaine to an undercover officer. And at that time, they released me on a future indictment. So they've got the dope boy, like, ahead of me, like on top of me or whatever, so they've got him. So they're going to get more connections from him if he rolls on anybody. So they don't even need me. So unless I get into trouble doing something similar within the next 7 years, I don't have anything to worry about. Like there's a charge on my record if any employers like really dig deep, but I was never convicted of anything and I never had the indictment return. So about a month later, I'm working at a restaurant and I'm just trying to move on with my life because, like I said, that was the single most embarrassing incident of my whole entire life. So baby daddy and I are still not getting along very well. And we never really were. It was always some drama. He was always unhappy about something unless I was bringing in a whole bunch of money, in which case he was my best friend and like everything in the relationship was perfect, right? So he goes online and he was apparently looking for information about my case or whatever. I don't know why he ended up on there, but he went to like the Franklin County Municipal Court Clerk.com website, and he's looking up like my name, and it shows that I have 2 warrants for my arrest. What do you mean I have 2 warrants for my arrest? And he comes downstairs and he's yelling at me, screaming, cussing, hollering. And he's like, you got warrants for your arrest? Like, you're a prostitute, da da da. And I'm like, what are you even talking about, dude? Like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And he's like, yeah, come upstairs and look, you're a prostitute. And I was like, no, I'm not, bro. Like, I'm gonna need you to calm down. So apparently, because of the other situation with that Friday night, they decided that they were going to pull me up on misdemeanor charges. So I had 2 warrants for my arrest, for misdemeanor ones for solicitation. 1 for each officer. So I'm like, what the heck? So I call my parents and I'm like, look, you guys, like, this is what's happening. It's from this same situation, and I'm going to turn myself in. So I turn myself in, and this whole, I go back to court. They release me on my own recognizance on both charges, but I ended up getting stuck in there for like 3 days because of a clerical error. And because because I talked to them without having a lawyer there, I told them that I was going to go out with them and that they could give me money for that. And because of that, like, even though I didn't say, yes, I will sleep with you for money, and like, this is how much I need, because of, like, my understanding is because the way that the law was written, I didn't have to explicitly say that I was going to engage in sexual activity with them for money to be convicted of prostitution. So what ended up happening was I go to court for like a few months, and like, we keep getting a continuance because I'm like, I didn't do this. And I'm talking to my public defender, and he was super nice. And he's like, look, this is just a process and we're going to go through it. And this is what it looks like. And don't worry, like, I will talk to you about everything every step of the way, and whatever decisions are made are going to be your decisions. And I will just give you the options. So my options were, I either go to court and go before a jury, in which case I would have like more fine. I could have more fines. I could get into a lot more trouble. Or I could plead down to 1M3, which was like a city charge instead of a state charge or something like that. And I would plead down to 1M3 instead of copying to 2M1s, or possibly getting in trouble because of like going, to court with a jury. And like, being really young and having no idea, like, once again, I had no criminal record. I'd never even been pulled over and gotten a speeding ticket at this point. And so I was like, okay, so I guess I will go ahead and plead to the amended charge, because I can't risk going to jail any longer. I can't afford to pay big fines. It's just not an option. My kids need me. And so I pled down, and so I am officially a convicted prostitute in the state of Ohio. I've definitely had trouble getting jobs before, especially earlier on. At this point, even though I was convicted of prostitution, I have received a level 1 fingerprint clearance card in the state of Arizona, which proves that they have found me fit to work with at-risk populations. So this includes children, the disabled, and the elderly. And that is just a miracle from me doing the right thing. And You know, whenever they asked me about this situation, I had to write a whole letter explaining what my charges were, why I had them, you know, and just detailing the situation. And I was completely candid with them. And I essentially wrote down the same story that I have just explained to you guys. And yeah, absolutely, things will come up to bite you in the butt for a little while. It's going to take some consistency before people see that you have really changed, you know, but it's so worth it. And you can achieve great things. I've been to college. I own my own business. I'm happily married to the man of my dreams. My kids are beautiful, smart, healthy, well-adjusted, like super cool little people, you know, and I have a great relationship with my family. It's just beyond my wildest dreams. Like everything that I wanted whenever I was a kid, you know, the house, the car, the kids, the husband, the dogs, the white picket fence, and, you know, a job that I didn't hate, and, you know, like just all those really basic things. I have all of those things and so much more. So don't give up. If you need help, it is out there, and you just have to reach out and ask. You know, don't be embarrassed of your past, because it just is what it is and you can't change it. And it's just really important to know that you don't have to give up on yourself. Yeah, I hope everybody enjoyed that story, because that was like, ugh, like I never talk about that. It was so bad. So, thanks for sticking it through if you've watched this whole video. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe down below, and leave comments, questions, concerns, anything that you got for me. I want to hear what you have to say about this video. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And yeah, see you guys later. Yeah.